welcome to another episode of the Architecture of Health. I'm Deb Voisin, and this week, Andrea McManus, one of my personal guides to in my transformative journey, is here with us today. She is a practitioner of accelerated evolution, and she's in the United States. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Deb, for having me.
Guys, this one I've been really excited about because I cannot tell you how much this woman helped me. I had no
Mm.
idea that her work would be so important. It's one of those things that until a friend really goes out of their way to say, try this, and I had no idea how much I would benefit from it. And I was like, oh, it can't hurt. I'm going through so much. Let me try it. And things that I had no idea needed to change were able to shift with her guidance. This practice is called accelerated evolution. I've tried to explain to people what it was because it got at, I had this hidden wound from when someone had tried to kill me that I had just numbed over. And people had pointed out, like, deal with that, deal with that. And I had no conscious tools. Like, or it was really something that could not be dealt with any of the techniques I had come across. I saw that there were trauma release techniques that helped my son, eye movement stuff, tapping, EMDR, brain spotting. I knew about this realm, but this particular toolkit, the way Andrea helped me with, is something I really want all of our audience to know, that they could recover more of themselves and go back to a state of ease. So let's start with, so that's how I heard about it, is because I knew you and you went out of your way to help me. But let's get, how did you discover this area of practice called accelerated evolution, and really what is it?
Well, thank you, Deb. It's been an honor to work with you, and thank you for the introduction. So my journey into this body of work was really through always seeking and getting curious, right? And so I too found that I was the common denominator in many, many things going on in my life. And I started asking questions, right? So as I got more and more curious, I started down that path. I ended up, I did Jaya's erotic blueprint work. And within that, I started delving into the medicine realms of ayahuasca, MDMA therapy, psilocybin journeys. I knew there was this deep core thing going on that was numbed out, that was a blind spot. I couldn't quite access it, right? I knew there was something, but I couldn't get to it. So on that searching, Jaya brought in a guest, Satya Raja. He's my mentor through Warrior Sage. That's who. There's several people that teach this body work, but he's the man that she brought in as a guest teacher, and he introduced accelerated evolution. And I just, within the first 5 minutes, I remember looking back at Jaya going, what is this? Like, oh my God. Because it had that transformation ability of the psychedelic realm without the substances. It was quick. It got into the subconscious quick, fast. It got out of the story and the talk, TikTok, chat, going on and on and on. It got right to the quick of the matter, and it quickly peeled back layers of the onion, unraveled things without the substance. And I also noticed, which I've seen, in the psychedelic medicine realm, there's a lot of people are skipping the integration. So that's the part within these tools that there's integration. And, you can devour as much content, learn as many tricks as you want, but if it's not integrated fully with your being, it just doesn't become practice, right? It slips back into the pattern. So I saw like little regression, once we've really rewired the brain with these techniques and gotten in there, so there's not regression. And so that I was just like, I have to do this. And so that began my journey down learning all these techniques and study.
Guys, I love the word rewire because similarly with the kind of movement coaching I do, we're always looking at getting at the deepest root pattern, the feeling of your whole self all the way from the ground to the crown, real time with a sense of remember ease. And I think when you talk about the unpeeling and the uncovering, we're remembering that state of well-being. You said something before we started recording about everybody talking about nervous system instead of maybe the calm system. Is there anything you want to say about that and how it fits in here?
So that was, that was just recent this morning, the way it came into a phrasing, a word, words, like a catchy slogan to remember. And I thought, the play like nervous system, our nervous system. And if we always think of our nervous system as a nervous system, then we're always nervous, right? And someone said to me, a colleague of mine said to me, it's a transformational system. Your nervous system is a transformational system. It's energy in, energy out. But what happens when the energy comes in and it gets stuck somewhere? Like there's a kink in the wire or a fray in the wire, or like you don't plug a 220 into a 110. You fry it, right? You have to have bigger wires. You have to have more capacity in the system to move that energy in and out. And so that's really, our nervous system is built to do, right? And the world meets you where you're at, right? And so if you're all stuck and, and contracted, that's what's going to be reflected. So it's this big energetic conductor, right? And so I don't think talk therapy really moves that through a lot of times, right? It just grows the energy and the nervous system can't handle it. And so you're still stuck in that charge with nowhere to go with it, right?
Yeah, the word I when we were working together more often, I remember that I knew it would be time to reach out for you if I found myself using the word spinning. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I'm really spinning on this. Oh, that means it's time to contact Dre because there's something circling around and around that's not going anywhere. It's not moving me forward. But to be honest though, can you tell me a little bit more about the variety of situations where people had this aha moment? Like you talked about realizing when you met the founder, you said what was the founder's name again?
Satya and Raja is who, I work with, right? So there's a man that's done these, he's spent 60 years, creating this body of technologies. But Satya and Raja is my mentor who I learned from.
And that once you heard about the work and you realized that it had this transformative ability without these uh, the psychedelics, that you could get this transformation without some of the risks of some of these other practices. That and to me that rings true. Like I don't I know there were a lot of things in old ceremony that had safeguards and that up the integrity of a transformational experience. And I have very little understanding of what it would take to create one of those experiences, but I know this experience felt very safe. It's my own stories, my own body. We would have a session, and it would we would go kind of around and around until the charge had changed, till the the energy of it had shifted into a harmonious, non-polarized, calm point of view. Even if we were talking about a life or death experience by the time our session
Mm-hmm.
was over. And can you tell me, tell the audience a little bit about the tools? Because I've tried to describe how it's in my body, uh, and yet it's also in my past. Like sometimes with some of the processes we went through together, my body would have a feeling and then it would find a memory from the past, and then there was
Mm-hmm.
this process of kind of reconnecting that to the rest of my life. Is there anything you want to say that you could describe how this works to the audience?
So this is the interesting part. It's more easily felt than it is explained. So a lot of times people say, well, how does it work? And then, if I tried to, I mean, like intense experience release, if I tried to explain how to do that, people would be like, what? You're crazy. Like this is absurd, right? Because it's quantum physics, it's biometrics, it's biomechanics. And from moving your body, from the work you're in, how patterns, things get lodged in the body, and you can't quite explain the intuition and the energy that moves and how to make it move and how to get out of spirals and how to get out of patterns. But what you were speaking to was, there's subjective and there's objective. So people come in with this objective thing, which is primarily thoughts, right? Thoughts turn things into an objective thing. Like, I'll figure it out. I'll analyze the crap out of this thing and I'll figure it out, and then I'll be able to solve it and everything will be great. So, how's that figuring out going for you? Like, your brain is a problem solver. So it will just keep, as you said, spin, right? And it leaves out, in this work, there's 4 parts to an experience. There's the thoughts, there's the body sensations, there's the emotions, and there's the images. And when something overwhelming happens, your body shuts down some of those, like taste and touch and smell. And so you can't remember any of those things, but you can remember what you saw, because it can handle like what it saw, but it can't handle all the other sensory input from that experience, right? So it like shuts it down. So you only have this one little piece that you remember, but the body has all that other stuff in there. Like what, the smell, the music that was playing, the sound, all these things, the tone of voice, the energy in the room, the pheromones, the color of the carpet, like all that is in your being, but the body maybe couldn't deal with it at 2 years old or at 8 years old. And so it only remembered one thing or didn't remember any of it, depending on what it was. So this objectifying, this thinking about it turns it into an object, right? But then we get into, I always say to you when we'd work together, is we'd have to get to the subjective part of the problem. I didn't say that specifically, but that's what I was doing. And that when you say, well, this, that, and the other, I'm really, blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, how do you feel about that situation? Because we want the subjective part of the problem, right? How you feel, what's the body sensation? What's the reaction to that experience, to that problem in the now, which is the only thing that exists, right? Is right now in this present moment. What are you feeling? What is your body tense? Is it cramped? Is it hot? What's going on in the body when you pull that experience up, right? So we start getting out of the mind and into the body, right? And then that's where we can start moving energy and start seeing where it lives and how big it is and the color and the images that come up and the story. And some people hear their mother's voice, their great grandfather's voice, all sorts of things, come up because it's such a big experience, right? Being
Yeah.
human.
Yes. And to that point, what attracted me also was the only time I had anything like talk therapy that worked. And I only tried a few times, guys, because I self fund everything. I don't do things through insurance usually. And I remember a Hakomi session where when the practitioner just asked me, oh, like, what are you feeling? And then where are you feeling that? And then I found that sensation in my body. That was a jumping off point to something that was very internal, that wasn't someone else projecting at me or me feeling like there was an authority that I had to follow or I had to keep analyzing and talk and get an even more spinning. I found when something could enter into the realm of checking the truth of it in my own body, then I was like, oh, I can trust that. Like I can trust my body because yeah, it's my best friend right here. So, and what was even more interesting about your method though was not just accepting the body's first offer, is this dialogue. Like, oh, okay, let's really listen to that. Where is it? What color is it? What is it trying to do? Why is this? And then what's the good thing that it's trying to do? And then peeling back and peeling at, like, what's the purpose of this feeling? And then other things we would go through is, and I remember like getting a feeling turning into a moment in time that we would revisit, and we would keep looking at this, having, I think this is related to what you were saying, where our body, when it goes through trauma, it'll have some snapshot of it. It has some piece of the scary thing. It couldn't contain the whole scary thing. So I remember in our sessions having this idea of where I would identify the snapshot of the most intense moment of this most intense thing, the scariest thing. And then we keep using that as a reference. We keep going back to the snapshot. We change something. We move, we touch points, we do something. We go back to the snapshot and we keep telling, has my body fully integrated in a safe way the parts of that experience that will free me of, in that case, guys, what it turned out to be was numb. I didn't realize how much I
Mhm.
had numbed myself. And we sat, I think, for 20 minutes. Like we would start most sessions. We were like, okay, where is it showing up? Like, what's going on? And I could go, oh yeah, my neck. Like, really? Oh, my knee. Like, it's
Mhm.
so clear. This time, when I hit this big one, we'd warmed up. We'd had quite a number of
Mhm.
sessions every couple of weeks, and we hit this big one for me that we kept nearing, and I couldn't quite. And finally, when we sat like 20, 30 minutes, I couldn't find it in my body. It's because my whole body, suddenly realized my whole body was numb. And then
Mhm.
I had this, and I'm going to try not to be too loud, this, I fell down on the ground and I started just bawling like, oh my goodness, I've been living with this numb state for 30 years. So
Yeah.
this is only my story, guys. I'm willing to share because I'm always changing. I'm always growing. I'm not attached. I have no shame about all this great stuff we did together, Dre. But what kind of but like to that point, I had no awareness that this was in me.
Right. Your body was protecting you, right? It's all about keeping you safe, protecting you, you know? So it's like in that realm of you mentioned it a little bit, is like all of these behaviors, these things that our body does, they're good intentions. They have the best intentions for us to protect us, to prevent us from getting hurt. It's all safety, right? So it's like that instinctual like survival, protect us, keep us from harm, right? And so it's like, that's the integration part. There's these parts of us that are doing things, procrastinating, being a control freak, I'm a recovering people pleaser, it's like all these things, like there's these identities we take on, like identity of a people pleaser is to please everyone. And for mine, it was like my unconscious goal is like to be loved, right? If I do all these things and make everybody else happy, they'll value me. They'll see value in me. I can't just be who I am and be valued. I have to do all these things. So there's all these behaviors that are kind of, it's like who's driving the bus, right? Like there's the control freak on the bus, the goofball on the bus, there's the serious rule follower on the bus, there's the sad person on the bus, and who's driving the bus, right? Like whoever else is not driving the bus is like, shut up, you're in the back, be quiet, I'm in control, right? But that can lead to, down interesting pathways, right? Where they may have worked when we were 5 years old to keep us safe, but now at 28 or 35, that doesn't really work anymore, right? Now it's interfering from where we want to get to.
So when you found the work, like you heard the high level description about how you can get these transformative states without having to use psychedelics,
Mhm.
that was still just a moment, though. There's something that got you deeper. You've been at it for years now. Like, what is it that has just kept you investing in this practice?
Has kept me investing. Well, I would say, just the big aha and the realization, like, I can't figure this out on my own. Everywhere I wander, like here I am, right? Like you think you can move to a new town where you don't know anyone, or you can buy a new wardrobe, or you can drop all your old friends, get new ones, or get a new job, or this could be different, or oh, it's the first of the year of this resolution. I'm good. And by February, you're like back to you, back to where you are, right? So it's this realization that there's this core part of me but that's authentic and golden and like my true authentic self, like who there's no beginning or end to that part of my consciousness and my being, but there's all this crap on top of it, like identities and conditioning and layering and experiences that just haven't moved through, right? So I just kept getting curious. Like I've always, ask my mom. She's like, "Stop asking me questions. What do I do with this child?" It's like, why? Huh? I have to investigate. So I was always curious, and I realized like I can't do this on my own. And I realized like somehow I thought I could see my own blind spots. No, it's like your eye can't see itself because it's foreseeing. Your finger can't touch itself because it's for touching. Like you can't, they're blind spots for a reason, right? It's like a cat and mouse game. So I knew there was something there, but I couldn't quite see it. So that kept me starting asking for help and finding these people that had gotten through their blind spots, right? And then, somehow I just started to learn who was safe and who to trust and to take that risk, because not taking it meant staying stuck in where I didn't want to be, right? And that allowed me to get into my body. That allowed me to feel these things, to unnumb, like you're talking about. Most of us have a level of numbness, avoidance, and we're covering up by all these distractions and behaviors we do. And that was also part of it, of realizing like I was sourcing things outside myself, trying to feel love from other people, trying to feel worthy from outside in instead of inside out, right? It's like, so in that experience, I just knew I had to give it to myself. There, no one else was going to fill that hole, right? So I just kept asking. And then it became like, these mentors came into my life, as I took different, I've David Data, Joe Dispenza, like everybody's kind of, Ram Dass, a lot of us saying the same thing in different words with different characters, but it all is the same, right? It leads back. We're all walking each other home, right? Don't mind the cat. But the cats, animals love this work. They just come to you when you're doing this work. But I started realizing that, these relationships, people are reflectors of ourselves. So in that, you know, you can see your blind spot because it's reflecting back to you, right? Like whether it's a bad relationship or a positive relationship, it starts getting reflected back. Like the world reflects back where you are and who you are, right? So you start seeing these reflectors. And just like people talk about like the shadow side, right? Um, there's this other side of the concept of like the golden shadow. Like you can't, if you don't have it within you, then you can't recognize it outside yourself. So if you're like, oh, I wish I could be creative like that person, like they're so creative, they're so funny, like I want to be funny like that, then you have it within yourself because you're seeing it outside yourself. So it's like that, seeing, oh, really, like contact, deep presence and contact with others, and learning how to listen and receive their transmissions, you know, that just kept me going to like deepen and deepen and like journey together with others, right? And this human experience and this process of like remembering who we are, right? We're so many times I'm like, well, I don't have this and I don't have that and I'm not and then I talk to others and like they have all sorts of stuff going on too. No one has it all figured out, right? So that's always like that reminder, and always being the student and always being open for transmissions and information.
Yes, and one thing I noticed about our sessions is some of them were pretty long. How
Mm-hmm.
long are sessions? How many do people do? Like what? I only know my experience.
Well, I cap it at, like to cap it at an hour and a half. But there were some, we started working together also. Like when you first start working with someone, if they've never done this type of work or haven't, it takes a minute for their brain to adjust to how I'm working and what I'm doing. And it gets quicker. It's like a brain gym. So it's getting quicker. Like we drop in quicker, process is quicker. Like you kind of know the the movements and the process, right? The nuts and bolts of it, right? Like, oh, I remember this, even though it's a different topic. So you get quicker at processing. Um, And sometimes people need to vent a little bit more, right? They just need to dump everything out, and we need to clear the mind a little bit to get to the meat and potatoes of the situation, right? So I try to cap it at like hour and a half, but I did a session the other day, like on the fly, it was 30 minutes, right? You know, I've when my mentors put us in hot seat coaching or laser coaching, like he pushes us to do like 6-10 minute sessions, like boom, 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 and it's not as formal, but it gets right into it. You can use these processes in many different ways. So I've done them on the bus. I did one at Magic Mountain with this 12-year-old that was scared to go on the Space Mountain, and her dad was like trying to force her onto it. And I was like, look, I can help you. You want help, And so you can do them on the spot. You can do 10-20 minutes, but an hour and a half is, just depends on, are we working on like something small or something really big with a lot of energy behind it?
And to be clear, we did all of our sessions remotely. It was all Zoom.
Yeah, we
Even a
did.
couple a couple were phone calls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're so robust. And I've had people mid-session, their dog comes in and jumps on them, or their kids come in and run, but it's just like, okay, pause, you just drop right back in. Like, they're robust. They don't, it just keeps on going. Like, it's hard to break the function of the process, right? The effect of it. So I have a colleague that he never does video. He always does it just on the phone. And he finds that that's like less stuff to distract someone. And because the foundation of all of this work is contact. It's deep presence where you're feeling the other being. You're feeling their presence. You're present with them. You're actively listening, right? You're dropping in and you're making contact. There's no distractions. You're 100% present. And you can do that through the phone. You start to pick up all sorts of things. Multitasking is BS, right? Like, you can have half your psyche over there and be like, yeah, I'm paying attention. No, it's deep contact, right? It's the carrier wave of communication, is that deep contact, that presence.
And I know you've used the language process. Like we'll run a process, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's a list. It's kind of like an inquiry list, right?
It's
Where
like
you're
let's say an inquiry list. It's a technology, so it's like a protocol. It's like step by step, and it's to explain that that gets into quantum physics. That gets into, because within these processes, there's NLP, there's EFT in there, there's EMDR, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's all sorts of pieces. There's enlightenment in there. There's enlightenment processes. This guy Zivarad, he's the 60 something years developing these. Now his kids are developing new processes, but it's it's taken like all these different techniques and condensed them into these super efficient technologies. He calls them spiritual technologies, because honestly, like, who has time to spend 30 years in therapy or counseling? Like, look at the state of the world. Talk about nervous system, like this state of fear and anxiety, and things are accelerating. Like, people want to get on with their lives and like get out of their stuck spots, their phobias, their fears, their manicness, and so it's like, why not do it in 20 minutes, 30 minutes?
and that's why I think the name is perfect.
You're
Accelerated
right.
evolution. Yeah, and
Right.
that's one thing that had kept me from opening this can of worms was I was like, well, with my son, I'd spent so much time and energy uh, pursuing solutions, and there were just so many different modalities and so many different things we were doing, from the acupuncture to the brain spotting.
Mm-hmm.
It was then we had sort of that treatment paralysis, like over treatment
Mm-hmm.
stress. So
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even going to begin my pursuit of feeling better till just serendipitously you
Mm-hmm.
happen to be starting to do this at a time when my whole life had just changed dramatically, and I knew
Mm-hmm.
I needed to do something, but I didn't want to spend lots of time running all over the place.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense that someone already invested this many decades
Oh
really
yeah.
sorting through. And that's one of the things I also do with the way I work with people with the movement resets is I've been
Hmm.
looking around at many modalities for 40 years pretty much. And why reinvent the wheel when we've got the technology? Great. So
Hmm.
here's a question. Uh who okay, kind of two branches we could go down. One is for whom would this not work? And the other is for the people that it works for, is there any shape? Like does it end up looking like a certain rhythm?
So, well, that was, something I wanted to include that I'm not a therapist, right? I've done trauma informed, you know, workshops and education. And some, trauma informed, procedures and, you know, somatics and things like that. But it's not therapy. And it's not to replace therapy either. Therapy is great. What I've found is this body of work complements anything, complements the work you're doing, complements therapy, complements, people in addictive recovery programs. It's a good complement. Like the way when I started, I was in therapy, and what I found is that the therapy was a good way to identify like your codependent or reactive abuse or these things, these patterns, right? It's like it can identify things, that awareness step. But then this body of work allowed me to accept those things I became aware of, because there's this piece where you're like, oh, I'm codependent, like I don't want to be codependent, like you don't accept it, but you now are aware of it, and once you can't unknow. So you're like, and you can't claim ignorance now because and so there's this piece of accepting that, like, and then after the acceptance, there's the taking action. So this body work is great for accepting these things you've realized, these patterns that we've taken on, and then figuring out what the doable actions are, like what the clear next step is to put into practice to change the patterning. So within that, this is not a good idea for anyone that's showing like bipolar, schizophrenia, sociopathic tendencies, narcissistic personality disorders, like any really that needs psychological treatment, things like that. It is also not indicated to like combine with MDMA or psilocybin. Like that's advanced work. It is wonderful to use going into a psychedelic session to really drop in and get clear on intention of why you're doing a ceremony, and for afterwards to do deep integration of what surfaced and became, arose during the ceremony. So it's a good complement to things. And then it's not good for people that are just really, really like addicted to their story. They don't want to change. Maybe they have like really treatment resistant depression, things like that. I've worked a little bit with people, but people are like heavily medicated on a lot of antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds. That can be interesting. It can be challenging because they're medically numbed out too, right? Just feeling their body. They're taking antidepressants or anti-anxiety pills, so their nervous system's dulled, muted. It's really hard to. I mean, it's still effective. Like I've still, I had a client a couple years ago. She's on antidepressants, and she didn't even tell me. Like it was halfway through that she decided to start taking them, and then she eventually said it. But she was still processing. She was still moving stuff through. It was still effective. So, and it actually in the end helped her get back off of the antidepressants. So it's case by case, but I don't work with people that don't want change, that are just like those people that they just want someone to listen to them, blah 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 blah. They just want to stay in the surface, right? It's like my mentor always says, at low levels of consciousness, all there are problems, right? So you're in that level, like talking about all the problems. At high levels of consciousness awareness, all there are solutions, right? So that's who I want to work with, is the people that are committed to wanting different for themselves, wanting to make change in their life, right? And so I get a lot of people that are on the other side of a bad relationship, are trying to like open a new chapter of their lives. I've worked with a lot of people that have pain in their body or have physical ailments, illnesses going on, because there's always a psychosomatic piece of any disease or you know ailment going on. um I work with people that have had like phobias. Like I just worked with a woman who had a trauma with scuba diving, and she wanted to continue scuba diving, but was deathly afraid of going diving again, right? So that was stuck in her body, right? And I also, so that phobias, fears, it works with addiction. I helped a client like quit smoking. I've helped people like change their diet, their addiction to food, things like that. You can also use it on the other side, and I'd love to do more of this, is for goal attainment, right? So you can clear traumas and clear or intense experiences, you can clear unwanted patterns, but you can also flip things and start working towards goal attainment. There's a whole piece of this body of work of enlightenment. Typically people have sat for days, hours, 10 days in a silent retreat, and you can have enlightenment in 20 minutes. Right. So that was a big part of his work, is there's a whole group of processes, Kensho, that are enlightenment processes, which those are
Wow.
fascinating. Those are, they're amazing.
You got me. I
Yeah,
I gotta try it.
we'll
I've
have to
gotta
do
try
it. We'll have to do a Kensho together. Yeah.
So, and I think one way to tell if I like the overall idea. Are you ready for change? And then there's part of
Mm-hmm.
it is, can you let go of whatever it is that's holding you back? Like, and these can be intertwined in any amount, in any frequency. And I didn't know how quickly something could change. Like I remember, like we have dealt with
Mm-hmm.
lifelong patterns that I would have just had to say, "Oh, that's just the way I am. That's just who I
Mm-hmm.
am." And I
Mm-hmm.
remember I finally learned with you to feel when the temperature was going up, when the
The
tension was
precursors.
going up. Yeah, and I started to notice like I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Oh, that's what a spinning is when I'm having these same thoughts, these talk thoughts, the same ones over and over." But there were also I started to go, oh, when the tension is going up, that's when I'm going to talk to Drea, because I want to turn this into my own energy. I don't want to be getting stuck. I want to move it forward. And I remember one case is I'd gotten so used to, um, I'm going to use the word of kind of being invisible or erasing myself, like everybody else. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. That's okay. Oh, don't mind me. Oh yeah, I'm so cool. Like, the cool girl awards where you'll tolerate any kind of BS. You just tolerate to try to flex that you don't care. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I remember I had to get tangled up in something so tricky that the amount of disrespect I was just tolerating and tolerating,
Mm-hmm.
and I had gotten so used to that then I was like, "Oh, this is it. This is it." And I run to you like a kid with a prize, like, "This is it." And then we had that tremendous breakthrough.
Yeah.
That was where we had and it had
Yeah.
to play itself out. I was like, "Oh, yet again, some really weird confrontation." I was like, "Oh, there it is
Right.
again." Yeah.
And this is that piece where I see this all the time. Well, one, it's like, when did you come up with, I can't remember, but when did you come up with like, I'll just be the cool girl, nothing bothers me? Like, were you 6, 8? Like those strategies, they get into place for survival and to keep us safe. And we hone them so that they're like, they're professional, they're genius level strategies. Like we think, oh, I'm an expert at nothing. Well, you're expert at being the cool girl. But when you move out of the survival part of being the cool girl, then you can like really be the cool girl and you're skilled at it. And it can be like your genius, right? At being in your fancy clothes, running on the treadmill, you're the cool girl, but it's like the fun side, right? The fun side of it, because there's a whole spectrum, right? There's the, if you do black and white, it's a pendulum, right? but you're committed to being this cool girl that isn't phased by anything, whatever, right? You know, and that's like a lot of energy to stay in that, right? And think you're safe. And then there's the cool girl that's like for fun and just because that's authentic. You know, there's all this whole spectrum of being the cool girl in there, right? You know, and so it's like being able to access all of that, not having like two choices, because two choices is an
Exactly.
ultimatum, right? That's not a choice, that's an ultimatum. There's this whole spectrum of choices, right, that you can access.
And you, kind of like also one of my favorite modalities that I also coach, primal movement. All healthy human movement is, uh, the body is making an
Mm,
infinity symbol somewhere, and
yep.
so and that's connecting even
Right.
those two extremes, the the extreme of black and the extreme of white, energetically in the quantum field, everything is
Mm-hmm.
connected by some kind of infinite wisdom and infinite energy. And I love, yeah, in your sessions you do that a lot, where I'll have some polarized idea, some fractured idea, like yes, no, zero, one, and we end up like moving all around
Yeah.
each side of the polarity until they
Mm-hmm.
start to buzz as one inner, like as
The
a
merging of
heart.
duality, you know, which comes in, you know, the for our ego, the first time we realize like I am and you are, and then something happens and it's like, oh, I'm unworthy and my sister's worthy and I'm unworthy. It's like these splits start to happen and we get stuck in one side. And that, you know, and that's a concept we use over and over in these processes of integrating polarities. And it's funny, we just learned a new process called a pair a day, right? I love to practice it with you. It's so fascinating because it's a polarity integration, but you're feeling each polarity, like it's like 7 questions in each polarity, right? You're going back and forth and really unraveling each polarity. But the concept of like if you're in this, you know, say bad and good, right? And you're stuck in the bad, right? If you can start to feel the good and then feel the bad and feel the good, like because if you're stuck in the bad, you think, oh, there's nothing good about it, but you start to be able to feel the good and then you feel the bad and then you feel the good, and it's like two sides of the same coin. They start to integrate and dissolve into oneness, right? I mean, it's all, we're all one, right? We're all made of the same stuff, but somehow we've separated into these dualistic things, you know, good,
Yep.
evil, bad, you know, right, wrong is a classic one people get stuck in, you know, oh, I'm right and he's wrong. And, you know, that was, you know, Republican, Democrat, look what's going on in the world, you know, divide and conquer is the oldest game in the book. Why do you think there's so much division? The narrative is like divide, 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 divide. If we're divided, we're not one, you
And
know?
I think the word that has helped me, um, think this way is harmonize, where I'm you're helping get rid of this trap.
Mm-hmm.
You're helping restore agency and choice and movement.
That's, yeah.
But that doesn't make black white or white black. It's that we are, learning to move around these disparate forces and recognize and respect that
Mm-hmm.
harmony means everything can still be different, but it's harmonious, and there's not this, uh, harsh separation of ourselves from each other, or ourselves even from parts of ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, you ever wonder, you know, we're golden inside. You know, we have all this light. We're made of light. We're pure gold inside and this love inside, right? And that this body we're in is the instrument to bring that sacred through, right? To each other, to the world, you know, just to be. We're all stuck in this like do to have and then be, but it's like in the just being and that being in that golden and that sacred, the doing becomes clear and the have just comes, right? It's not to say you don't need to take action, it's not to say, but integrating all of that and having choice and having access to all of it, right? And not being in a like, you know, survival fight flight freeze mode, you know, it gives us access to clear choice, to knowing, to going after what we want, right? Like you're saying, in the harmonizing of all of it all, right?
Yes.
It's really important.
So our audience is probably really curious. Like, let's say even someone in their car right now, or they're washing dishes. Like, what is one little nugget that they could even apply right now to the way they think about themselves?
One nugget that they could apply is contact with themselves, really getting present. Breath is free, it's simple, you can do it anywhere. Just deep breaths, like, you know, full body inhales, really just even just a little bit, like, oh, what do my feet feel like right now? What does my chest feel like? Really being in the now, and knowing that even if you think about the past, it's still in the now. And you're thinking about the future, it's still in the now. The now is the only thing that exists, right? So it's like being present, like unplugging the phone, turning off the noise, even if it's a minute a day, 30 seconds a day, just that moment to just be with yourself, to really deeply love yourself, give yourself a hug, or, snuggle with yourself, and put your hands on yourself and let yourself know it's safe. It's okay to feel, contact with yourself. I think that's so important right now, especially in the light of everything going on. There's the protesting, and there's this discussing that and this, and who's right, who's wrong, and all these people need to be, arrested, and this, all this stuff. But it's just like people, we're all reflections of each other. Everything going on in the world is a reflection of everything, right? So it's like there's all this noise of what we need to do and who needs to do what, and they need to be responsible, without working on ourselves. Like, it starts with us, right? You get on the airplane, and the oxygen bag comes out, and they say, put it on yourself first and then help others. So how are you going to help the world if you're not walking in that? If you're not working, calming your own nervous system, like, because all ships rise with the tide, right? Like, if you win, I win. We all win, right? So we have to look in the mirror. We have to be in contact with ourselves and raise that frequency in ourselves.
And then if the audience wants to accelerate their evolution, what does that look like? I'm pretty sure you're going to say there's
I
a
see what you
website,
did there.
or they text you. Yes, I'll take I'll take a hit of that. I'm going to turn up the knob to 11. In fact, guys,
let's go.
That's guys. That's it's funny. That's why I sprint in skirts. I wanted the sprinting to be an 11 in volume, like in the movie Spinal Tap.
Yes.
I used sprinting because I could accelerate my evolution.
Right.
Because whatever problem was going to hurt me in a 2 hour long walk was going to show up on that treadmill within 10 seconds. And if I could see the problem in 10 seconds, I could spend the 2 hours fixing the problem instead of getting really far away on a long walk and then worried about how I was going to get home. So this idea of intentionally kind of amping something up so that you could learn from it faster, that is what this really is. You always would have me turn up the feeling to 11 so that we could get at it and do something about it. All right. And the way I do it is I just text you. I say, hey, Dre, I'm spinning. Let's go.
Exactly. And that, I love that you do that with the skirts and everything, because it's also like, in our sessions, we've had a lot of fun. I like to make it fun too, because this whole, like, oh, I don't want to do the work. Oh, it's so hard. I want to look at my stinky, shitty shit that's, so it's like making it fun and getting to the point where we can laugh at ourselves, right? Because the joke's on us. It's like, oh, yeah, joke's on me again. I have no one else to blame. I did that again. I chose that, right? So it's like being able to get to that point where you could just laugh at yourself. Well, you were asking me, how would you start? So I'm kind of old school. Like, you can text me to schedule I have a scheduling link I could send you, if you text me. I have my socials. I have Instagram. I have a Facebook. And I have a newly being designed landing page that's on its way. So
Cool. And is there any number of sessions that consistently you see different results?
I like to do a pack of five. So I call it, like the end of struggle or the get out of your own way pack. We sometimes just play it, figure out what the problem is, and then we'll appropriately name the pack of five. And I've been playing with like giving people the name a name. My mentor has this this practice of like giving us a name at our retreats and stuff, and then you're just called that the whole retreat. They're pretty hilarious, right? Sometimes your name will change, but I've been playing around with that of like we name the pack of five, whatever it is that we're dealing with, right? And that's the starting point. So we do a pack of five, go from there and check in and where we're at. But pack of five, most people do a pack of five or a 3-month package. I do one-offs, but really it's fascinating. One-offs work more with like the scuba diving or getting in the car again after driving, like just doing a quick intense experience release, to get someone sorted to go on a trip or to fly in an airplane or something they're really scared of, just release that from their body, or something that just happened on the spot, right? So one-offs can work, but really with multiple sessions the brain gets rewired, the nervous system grows in capacity, and
In my
and my goal
experience,
is that like we don't have to work together, anymore, except for like tune-ups and stuff along the
yeah,
way.
I was going to say that's exactly my
Yeah.
experience too. I remember I had to do one sort of one off, even though we had
Mm-hmm.
already had some sessions, because I was getting ready to take this trip that was terrifying me.
No,
And
right.
my subconscious had buried that I knew where my passport was. I'd been tearing my house apart.
That's right.
It was like a week in, and I was like, I gotta contact Dre. We did a session, and I kid you not, it was within minutes of the end of the session. I walked right over to the photocopier. I had left them on the photocopier.
Uh-huh.
That was so. I
I
mean, it was
remember
such a
that.
clear sign
Yeah.
that I had some held. And the other thing
I
was
help people
exactly
find their keys a lot.
the other thing was that we did more intense in the beginning, but I was it was already clear. So much of my life had changed that I had no choice but to transform. So I was like, okay, let's do it the right way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then less and less. And then we went like what, a whole year and a half
I
this
think
last
so, yeah.
time? Yeah. So
And
Tuna,
sometimes
and
it's like that. It's like, people, what is this? It's so different than like talk therapy, right? Which talk therapy, it's like you can vent for a little while and you feel better for maybe a couple days, a week, because you vented off all this, but then it comes back, right? So this, it's interesting as people are like, what is this? And I'm like, just trust the processes, they work, right? And people get interrupted, but it's like one of those things that you think, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. It's like it's not enough, and then all of a sudden something just shifts. It's like the tipping point happens, and you're like, oh, I didn't react to my mom like I used to. Or I didn't, get in a fight with my husband again about that same thing over and over. Or, oh, like I got up early without an alarm clock. Like some pattern just shifts because it's like rewired. So there's like the cumulative effect of them,
yeah, and
is
I wanted to say that
amazing.
real transformation would mean that the rhythm of it changes.
Yeah.
Like if there's something that you have to do every single day to feel good for years and years and years, it's not working.
Yeah, it has to be integrated, right? Like muscle memory. And, that's the great part about like doing it over and over. Your just brain starts to work differently.
Yeah.
It starts to make a change. We don't need any more reminders on our phone and to-do lists, and you know it's like I just did a series on myself, so I process on myself. So I just did a series on myself of like my resistance to meditation, like what my problem is of like I'm supposed to meditate like this many times a day, and now I'm just doing it. because I cleared out all the noise that was going on around, like when I went to go meditate. It was, the sabotage that was happening.
All right. Well, I'm glad we finally did this. I've been
I know, me
nagging you.
too.
I've
Thank you
been
so
after
much.
you. Yes. Oh. So this is Andrea McManus. She is a practitioner of accelerated evolution. We're going to put her contact info in the description, and she means it. You can actually text her and get an appointment.
I much rather, prefer like just texting, or I meet people out and about, referral friends of friends. I'm just old school like that.
All right. Well, any last words before we call it a day?
I just know that, you're gold inside. Share that golden light.
What a perfect way to end. All right. Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much, Deb. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.